He's coming later.
Oh.
He collects on Erev Purim for his Karen. He has the Karen, the Gemach and Ramot for.
We do this Mar Amincha, right?
Anytime you want. You can start from Rosh Chodesh Adar.
What is it? The
Every day you can give.
I forget.
So I saw 27 shekels, and then I guess the higher. It depends on how you calculate it. 43 shekels
For
one person.
27 shekels.
That's what I know.
So 100 covers you and all.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's right.
Okay. Anyway, today is the 13th day of Adar, the Tanis Esther, the fast of Esther, and the 13th day of March. And we're at the bottom of Ayin Zayin. So we began to see yesterday this very important concept, something that does not have the potential for bittul, cannot go down into these worlds, cannot individuate, it can't become individualized. So we talked about animals and nature being something that can't really come down into the world. It always remains, and we say come down, we don't mean more physical. We mean more distant from God, more in a state of disconnect from God. That's what it means to come down. The lower you are, individuation means the things are separate from one another.
So the animal comes down not as low as we do?
No, because they can't.
Wow, that's like a contradiction.
It's one of the first Maimarim in Torah Or, is to explain why it is that we eat them. What is that?
Yeah.
What is that all about? So it says if they must be of a higher level. If we're sustained from them, they must be at a higher level. So what is it about us that is sustained? So not our divine soul. Our divine soul eats Torah; it doesn't eat animals or vegetables. Same thing. What's sustained by them is our animal soul, is our body, which is from a lower place, and it gives us the feeling of being separate from Hashem, separate from one another. Because of that separation, we have many things that they don't have. We have morals; they don't have morals.
Is that also, in a sense, there's a place where the human dead body has more tumah than...
Right, exactly. Same thing. And that we say, so we won't get into it now, but the difference between a non-Jew whose body is here and a Jew's body is they have different levels of tumah also.
Yes.
Depending on how low you came, you're able to come. So we said Hashem does not let anything go low. It's a law of nature, as it were, a law of the cosmos, unless it has the potential to come back. He doesn't send someone scuba diving unless they have a way to come back up.
So in a way, Moshe Rabbeinu's body would have been the most tumidic type body, and we don't know where it is. I know I'm going out.
Yeah, you could say the opposite, that because he lived in this world and not individuated, that he had such bittul, such nullification, so he rose above everyone else. Because the whole point is to rise back up.
Yes.
You don't remain in the state. Again, the point is, it's more about life. What is life like? Am I here to individuate, to become something in the world, and then nullify myself to Hashem? Or am I here to remain like an animal without much individuation? There's not much difference between them. And also, they don't have any nullification to God. They don't nullify the God. They just are with God. They were never disconnected. They were never somewhere else. That was the big principle that we saw last time. And this is going to help us understand why the klipa has its face to the, let's call it the individuation, the yosher, the line coming down, and its back to the circle, to the makif, where there is no individuation. Because the klipa, we say, it's close to us, but it's not us. It doesn't have the ability to, not to individuate, which it can. It doesn't have the ability to nullify. And because it's the opposite. What is the klipa? Klipa is exactly something that causes you to not nullify to God, to not see God, as it were. So it cannot come fully down. It doesn't have the power of nullification. So if it doesn't have the power of nullification, it can't use the yosher. It's like, I was thinking about this the other day, 2 days ago, and the image, the metaphor that came to me is chutes and ladders. That in Torah, you can only use a chute to go down if there's a ladder, if you can climb a ladder back up. So the chutes are funnels going down, and the ladders are going up. And the klipa can't use the ladder. So because he can't use the ladder, it's not fair for you to fall down the chute. So you can't play that game. Chutes and ladders is only for people. People can go down, they can also come back up. Okay? They can disconnect, they can feel separate from Hashem, but they can also have bittul. They can also nullify to Hashem. And so when they nullify, they come much higher than they were originally. That's also one of the tenets. He didn't speak about this yet. In any case. So he said, והגיע השפע לתוך הכלים, ונהיה הכלים מגבילים אותה בלי תומשך להלאה להתלבש בכלים בלתי ראויים, הם כלים הטמאים דקליפות. So when the light, the revelation of Hashem that comes through individuation, through the yosher, through the lines, comes down, it is stopped from enclothing in things that are not worthy of receiving this light because they can't have bittul, because they can't have nullification. שאין בהם מבחינת ביטול כנ"ל. שאין ראויים לקבלה, לקבל בתוכן את האור מאין סוף ברוך הוא. And because of that, because they have no potential for nullification, they cannot receive the light of the infinite. ולכן, מבחינת אור המתלבש בבחינת יושר, היה נמנע השפע לחיצונים. So, because of this, like we said, the klipa cannot receive anything from the yosher. It cannot receive anything from the individuation, from the line coming down. אכן, מה שיכולים לקבל חיות מבחינת העיגולים דווקא. But what they can receive sustenance from to exist, everything needs to have sustenance in some way. They can receive it from the circles, from the makif, from the surrounding light, where there is no individuation. And because there is no individuation, there's no need for nullification. So there they can receive. שהוא למעלה מהתלבשות בקולים, וחופף עליהם ביות שלעוצם רוממותו ועוצם גדולתו, אין יכול להיות נגבל בכלים אפילו דקדושה. We actually read all this. So their back is to the makif, and in the makif, they can actually receive sustenance from there, because the makif is not, it doesn't individuate, it doesn't come down. It remains where it is. And what is it about the makif? That the makif, אין מעשה התחתונים תופסים מקום כל כך. We said the actions of those who are below do not make an impression on the makif. They don't make an impression on the circles. Why not? Because it says, Im tzadakta ma titenu. On the one hand, if you're overly zealous and holy and you do everything right, what can you give to God? You still can't give anything. Why? Because when it comes to the makif, of course in the individuation it means everything. But when you look at the makif, it doesn't mean anything. And we said that an example of this is, does the number 500,023 mean anything to infinity? Infinity doesn't care. There's this number, that number. They're all negligible. Doesn't matter. But on the same token, even if you do incredibly terrible things, you can't blemish the makif. You can't do anything to it. It's not going to be any worse. The makif is going to stay the same. The circles are going to stay the same. There's a lot of questions one can ask about this, because you could ask. You mentioned dogs. I think last time we were talking about psychology. That even if a person is in the lowest place, he always has his surrounding light, the part of the neshama that didn't come into the body, which has not been blemished. So one would say, if nature, we said the makif, the circle is like nature. So why is it that in the generation of Noah, when people sinned, the animals also suffered?
Oh yeah, that's right.
So the nature was blemished. Okay, so that needs a separate discussion about what happened there, but it is exceptional. It's not the usual way, unless you have an animal that became completely connected to the human. And we said that dogs are like that. Dogs get depression. Why do they get depression? They're not depressed themselves. They pick up the behavior from their owner. And there's a type of psychological symbiosis
And
that causes
the
that to happen.
likens us to dogs.
Right. But normally, what we do has no effect. I'm not talking about climate or whatever type of stuff, or pollution or stuff like that. But what we do, whether we daven correctly or we keep Shabbos correctly or whatever, does not affect the animals in the savannah. The sages say that the nature of the land of Israel is different. It's more connected to us. It's individuated. How do I see that the land of Israel is individuated? Because the Torah told us to divide the land up by the people. That there's nachalot, there are inheritances. There's plots of land that go from family to family. So the land is more individuated than, and even before the Jewish people came into it, before the Israelites came back to it, it was called the land of the 7 nations. Even then it was individuated in some way. There it was individuated in the negative sense, but there was individuation. ולכן יוכל להיטיב גם למי שאינו ראוי, עד גם שממית, בידיים תתאפס והיא בהיכלי מלך. Therefore, when it comes to the makif, it can give even to those who are not מגיע להם, שאינו ראוי לו, people that are not that shouldn't be given.
Entitled to,
right, entitled. Even the people that are, even the souls that are not entitled can receive from the makif. From there, everyone can receive. That's why it's very interesting that even someone who is not holy, who is not connected to Hashem in his day-to-day life, from time to time will receive from the makif great revelations. The problem is that they don't last, because the moment it comes down, it sort of dissipates, because it has no vessel to be contained in. But the makif can give it. But the classic meaning of this is that the makif, the surrounding light, the circles, they are what sustain existence. So everybody exists. So we don't see a strange situation where people imagined, if I don't keep Shabbos, I'll be struck by lightning. Where they got that from, I don't know. I don't know where this image came from. But that would be an impossible image. Because the surrounding light, which is nature, which is the existence of everything, does not look at the individual acts. It doesn't treat it that way. And the symbol in Chassidus is very simple. It says that it's a circle. In the circle, there's no up or down. Every point on the circle is equal.
So it would take really a miracle to...
it would take an intervention,
yes.
and it would have to come from somewhere entirely different.
Yeah, right.
So theoretically it could come, but it will never come from nature.
Yeah, right.
Nature doesn't see things that way. Okay. And because of that, there can be a little lizard in...
I'm sorry?
Smamit. Smamit is I used to think it's one of those little lizards.
Oh, little lizard.
But then my children told me that it's something else. It's I don't know, maybe like some insect. I don't remember. But it can be, even though it's not proper for it to be there, but it'll be even in the king's chamber, and nobody cares. Why? Because it's here. That's what I used to think it was. A gecko,
right.
Anyway,
and that could be in the
it's in the king's chambers, and there's ants there, and all kinds of things, and it's okay. רוצה לומר שגם לחיצונים יוכל להגיע חיות משם, אף על פי שהם אין בהם בחינת הביטול כלל, רק דקרו לעילה כדלקה. So even the forces that are called חיצונים, like the klipa, they're the outside forces, they can receive sustenance from the makif, from the circle, even though they have no bittul, like we said, because and even though they only call God the God of gods. What do they mean? They mean, like Aristotle, there's a force and a force above the force and a force above the force until you get to the prime mover. And that's what God is. He's just a mover. He doesn't command. He has no will. He doesn't care. It's all just it's all just forces. It's all just nature. So even someone who feels that, okay, on the top there's someone moving it all, that's fine. Nature will sustain them, because even though they have, again, no concept of God wanting something from them. There's no wanting. As Balaam said, "Lo uchal la'avor et pi Hashem." I cannot go against the mouth of God, what God tells me to do. So what does he understand? That he has a mitzvah? He doesn't have a mitzvah. He doesn't have any concept that I'm supposed to do this or supposed to do that. He says, I look at the nature of the world, and from there I take my cue. When's the right time to curse? When's the right time to bless? What's the right thing to say? All this is what we call without da'at. There's no consciousness involved. In fact, it's the opposite. All these systems that Balaam was the master of, what they do is they cancel the consciousness. They cancel a person's consciousness, conscientiousness. There's no discernment, because that's the whole point. You're supposed to be guided by the winds of nature. It's something entirely different. And that's called Darchei Emori. That is called in the Torah the ways of the Amorites. Balaam was an Amorite. Bilam was one of those nations. And his entire picture of reality is that God does not command anything. It's either nature allows you to do something or nature does not allow you to do something. And that's where he gets his sustenance from. Shezeu me'at b'chinat habitul. So even though there's a little bit of nullification here to nature, this is not the bittul of Kedusha. This is not what it means to nullify to God's will. Hu b'chinat yesh mamash yichashev ach le'otzem hu b'chinat yesh mamash yichashev. And someone who feels like this, that God is only the first mover, He's only the force behind nature, he's considered to be a complete being, meaning that he has no sense of nullification. He has no sense of non-being. He has no ability to understand it. Okay, so we'll end here. And as far as I'm concerned, we can learn tomorrow. I don't have an issue. And so...
What would be the issue?
Purim.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Purim Sameach.
I'm sorry.